no one's just a receptionist or just
this
admin,
is true.
and that's a really important distinction, and I hate it when I hear it, so I can't believe I've just said it. But when I started out in reception, I think I just didn't really see how you could steer that conversation. But once I got some scripting involved and made sure that I did understand the products and the services, it meant that I could actually convert pretty much 80 to 90% of inquiries. And obviously you've got your price shoppers that aren't going to book with you if they don't like what you have to say. But for the ones that have a genuine problem and you let them know that they're in the right place and that you have the tools and the people to help with their problem, you can convert those.
Yeah, awesome. So telephone conversions is one of them, and you say hopefully around 80% was what you got good at doing, and one of the ways you did that was through scripting and getting better and better at that script. And I assume then you have to sort of train others on that. Hi everyone, welcome to the Optimised Practice Podcast. I'm your host today, Blake Sargent, and today I'm joined by Nadine Abbott, and we're very lucky that Nadine is also now our operations manager at the Hive, but she was also a practice manager for many years and ran a practice down in the southwest. So I've asked her to come on and give us some insight into some of the top tips and the major learnings she's had about being a practice manager, because often as owners of practices, you don't see what it takes to be a great practice manager and some of the things they actually go through. So this is Confessions of a Practice Manager. Hi Nadine. So tell me, when you started as a practice manager, what were some of the first things you learned or some of the first challenges you faced?
Well, firstly, I didn't start as a practice manager. I started as a receptionist. I didn't have much receptionist experience before that. I worked with the NHS, so I had medical experience, and that was about it. So there was a lot of learning as I went, which I think was actually a great way of doing it because it just meant that I grew as the role grew. But one of the first things was realizing that actually it was down to me to understand the products and the services and to spend some time with the practitioners, kind of just getting to know them, getting to know what they were about, but also just hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, because it's all well and good if you're in a podiatry clinic or osteo, physio, whatever, sell this, we have this service, yes, but what is it? And actually going in and experiencing it for myself. So I had a couple of treatments. We talked through a lot of the things that they did just to get a real understanding, because being able to speak to the patient, knowing what it feels like to be the patient, changes the way you can speak to the patient about what they're going to experience when they come into the practice. I think that's really important.
So did you sit in on some treatments as well? Was that part of your training? Yeah,
so went in on quite a few different things just to make sure that I had like a well-rounded picture. So I've actually assisted with nail surgery, all sorts of things really. But it really helped get a better understanding of everything that went on in the practice.
And have you witnessed with other practices that you've worked with since that you've helped out, that there's a disconnect between front of house and the treatment side of things?
Yeah, I think there definitely can be, because when you're on reception, you're in your own little bubble. So you're thinking about, God, the phone won't stop ringing, and I haven't been for a wee for ages. I need to go and get a drink for the practitioner because they've only got 5 minutes. All the next patients at the door, especially with COVID and how everybody was running their practices. You're just doing your own thing unless you make sure that you're getting actually into the practitioners' rooms and kind of seeing what they're doing as well. So being part of their meetings as well is a useful thing to kind of know their process and what their struggles are, because you're very aware of your own, but making sure you understand the team and where their difficulties lie, I think can help you become a better practice manager.
If you were to list some of the things that you felt you were in charge of and that you feel it's really important for a practice manager to be in charge of, what would that be?
Culture. Not that you're necessarily in charge of it, but you're definitely a custodian of it, making sure that you're living up to the values and that you're holding everyone around you accountable and that you're challenging people in the right way if they're not doing something that they should be doing, and doing it with respect, not calling them out in front of other people, that kind of thing.
Nice. And as far as the functions go, you know, being in charge of specific, so we're in charge of the culture, with the custodian, the culture, what other things are you in charge of? Diary
management is huge, because if there are massive gaps, then that's just a complete drain on resources. Yes, it's lovely if the practitioner gets a little rest for a minute, but also if you've got like 5-minute slots that just keep adding up throughout the day, you could have fit in an extra 2 or 3 patients. So it's really important to keep an eye on things like that. Also, if you need to move things within the diary, trying to keep an eye on that ahead of time so that you don't kind of get a bit of a bottleneck. You're really busy in the afternoon, but you've got nothing to do in the morning. Also, just making sure that people can utilize their free time really well, like writing letters and things like that, keeping on top of their admin, that sort of thing.
And what metrics for the practice did you feel like you were in control of, or at least part of influencing?
For sure, conversion rate. So anytime an inquiry comes in, it's down to you to either turn it into something or unfortunately turn it away. And I think early days I didn't, when I was just a receptionist. I should never say that.
That's where you start. It's where you started, right?
No one's just a receptionist or just
this
admin,
is true.
And that's a really important distinction. And I hate it when I hear it, so I can't believe I've just said it. But when I started out in reception, I think I just didn't really see how you could steer that conversation. But once I got some scripting involved and made sure that I did understand the products and the services, it meant that I could actually convert pretty much 80 to 90% of inquiries. And obviously you've got your price shoppers that aren't going to book with you if they don't like what you have to say. But for the ones that have a genuine problem and you let them know that they're in the right place and that you have the tools and the people to help with their problem, you can convert those.
Yeah, awesome. So telephone conversions is one of them. And you say hopefully around 80% was what you got good at doing. And one of the ways you did that was through scripting and getting better and better at that script. And I assume then you have to sort of train others on that. What other metrics, either KPIs of a business, did you sort of take ownership of?
So the two main others that stand out are rebooking rate, because whilst that could largely seem like that's on the practitioner, you as the receptionist, practice manager, admin, whatever you want to call it, you're taking responsibility of them rebooking that appointment. So if everything's gone to plan in the treatment room, they come back out to you, they should know what they're supposed to be coming back to book in. So I don't know, 6-week rebook or something. We used to have a little form, so it would come to me and I could see what the practitioner had recommended. So I'd be then saying, so-and-so wants to see you in 6 weeks. So let's have a look at the date. That would be the whatever it is of October. Okay, let's get you booked in. And I'd take control of that rather than giving lots of choices of, oh, do you fancy Tuesday? Do you fancy Thursday? What works for you kind of thing. It's like, this is the date that it falls on, and then using the 2-part close. And I'm going to just deviate for a second because I think it's worth mentioning.
Go for it.
But giving the option of, okay, so we've got Monday or Wednesday. What works better for you? Monday. Okay, morning or afternoon? Afternoon. Okay, we've got 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. What works best for you? 4 o'clock. Great. Because people are just overwhelmed by choice. And that's when you end up kind of falling into a pit of they just don't book because they don't have their diary, or they just can't kind of think past, I just want to pay and get outside. So just making that easier. You can use the 2-part close for lots of things in life. It's just a handy thing to know. So rebooking rate, that's really good. Conversion, and also NPS, Net Promoter Score. How much people have enjoyed their whole experience, whether they would recommend us to a friend, colleague, whatever. That's such a huge thing that reception are a part of, because you could be the person greeting them. You could be the last person to speak to them. You could be filling an unfortunate gap where the practitioner is running a bit late, because it does happen. How well you've done that can really influence how their whole experience was. So that's a huge one for reception, I'd say.
Nice. And for those who aren't familiar with Net Promoter Score, what is it? What's Net Promoter Score? Customer service satisfaction, right? But there's a question, isn't there?
Would you recommend us to a friend, colleague? So you've got your 0 to 6, they don't really like you. You've got your 7s and 8s, you're okay. You've got your 9s and 10s that are like, yes, we love coming here. And obviously you want to aim for 9s and 10s, but that all depends on how the whole experience was, and everybody's got a part to play. And I think that's the thing to not lose sight of, is you might feel like you've only had like a slight touch point with them, but actually there's some really key touch points.
Nice. So we've got telephone conversions, we've got Net Promoter Score, we've got rebook rate, which I assume includes new patient rebook rate as well. And then how much responsibility do front of house take for people who cancel and don't rebook, and then the DNAs, versus how much of that is the responsibility of the practitioner delivering certainty and clarity and outlining a clear treatment plan in the treatment room?
It's definitely a shared thing, but obviously cancel, no rebook, you're potentially, depending on how they cancel, you're the one taking the phone call. You can action it at the time, or kind of acknowledge, okay, they're poorly, they don't want to talk about it right now. You then make a note, whether that's mental or you write it down somewhere. I would advise writing it down somewhere. But You then get back in touch with them in a week's time. Hi, so-and-so, how are you feeling? Let's get you booked back in, because we don't want to kind of miss out on the treatment plan that whoever had laid out for you. Yeah, great, feeling much better. Let's do that now. That kind of thing. Or if it's just like, oh, sorry, I forgot, I've got another appointment. Right, okay, let's look at when we can get you back in. We don't want you to kind of miss out on the process that we've started here. So it's really key. You've also got your did not attend. They're unfortunate. We don't want lots of them, but they do happen. But just being aware of how many we've got, because often we get loads of those, or it feels like loads of those in one day. It's been 2. And actually, maybe it was just 2 that month. So it feels bad on that particular day. But actually, when you look at it as a whole, it's not so bad at all. And just making sure that we keep on track with those, keep in touch with people. If they've missed an appointment, why did they miss it? It's not ideal. What is your cancellation policy? Everybody's is going to be different. Some people charge, some people don't. But just kind of getting in touch, and not in a missed your appointment, that's not on. Just in a, hey, just want to check in and make sure that everything's okay. We had you booked in for whatever date. We missed seeing you. Let's get you booked back in. And then it kind of takes the pressure off, because if someone did have an unfortunate situation, the last thing you want to do is call and berate them. Or if they did just have an honest, like, I forgot moment, you're not making them feel bad about human nature. It will happen sometimes.
Yeah, very true. So how do you deal with someone then who either calls up and cancels, or, you know, when you try and rebook them, they go, I don't have my diary with me, I'll call you, right? They try and fob you off. And what's the script, or what's the technique?
It happens, and it's one of those that you may have to deal with it a couple of different ways, really. You may get someone that's just absolutely, they do not want to book in that moment. But again, you make a note to yourself and you revisit it in a week, 2 weeks, whatever. But the main thing is to kind of try and take control of the situation and say, totally appreciate where you're coming from. We are getting quite booked up in the next couple of weeks. So what I'd suggest is, let's get you in. If you do need to change it, give me a call back. No problem at all. So at least you're kind of managing their expectations that if they call back later, they might not get the appointment they were hoping for. And also you've kind of encouraged them as much as you can to keep that appointment as close to it was as you can.
Yeah, right. Well, you've got a script and a technique for everything. So Nadine, thank you again. And I will see you all in the next episode.